Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Discovery Road. I'm James Nelson. In this episode, we visit one of our favorite places, Bryce Canyon National Park. We'll learn about the man behind the name, Ebeneezer Bryce, who left his mark all over the state before he left for Arizona. Plus, a story about art, big art in the outdoors, a fun story about murals. And finally, a stop in the oldest operating church in the state that we could find, a little Sunday service. Buckle up, people, we're burning daylight. As soon as you enter the Pine Valley, the charming, unspoiled setting sweeps over you. The whole town feels like one big neighborhood. Historic homes, old-time implements, hand-carved family names, fields with horses munching on tall grass, and nearby, stands of tall, lush pine trees hosting families around cool water. And then the town prize catches your eye, Pine Valley Chapel.
I feel strongly that heritage is an important characteristic or quality of everyone, no matter where they're from. They have a heritage. And we are pretty protective of our heritage of this valley because it has influenced so many of us in so many good ways.
Locals have to juggle their activities and church services with a constant flow of tourists and visitors wanting to see the little white chapel. It's their treasure, and they keep it polished and very pretty.
We grew up calling the people in Pine Valley aunt and uncle so-and-so, not only because a lot of us were related, but because we felt close to each other because of that pioneer heritage and learning and growing through the hard work that everyone did.
A man named Larry Gardner told us if we wanted to find out about that hard work the pioneers did, we'd have to meet some of his friends first.
These are great, great people, great men, great women, and great young people that have passed away. A lot of young people died in the early days with diphtheria or whooping cough or horse accidents or whatever it was, and they're all buried right here.
It's kind of reminds us how tough life was.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, life was not easy. Yet they never complained. I quoted Robert earlier. I went on my way rejoicing was one of his favorite phrases, and I really like that.
Robert Gardner certainly did go on his way rejoicing. This statue in the middle of an intersection in St. George, Utah proves it. He helped settle the area there, and yes, he had a hand in the Pine Valley with his sawmill skills.
So my great-great-grandfather Robert was a very key lumberman in this area. He called by Erastus Snow to come to Pine Valley and set up his sawmills as he did. He quickly started to take orders for lots of lumber and cut a lot of the lumber that was used in the early settlement of St. George and Washington and Santa Clara.
The cool Pine Valley retreat was growing. The need for a chapel was obvious. Robert Gardner could cut the timber, and Ebeneezer Bryce would have to build it.
Nobody knew how to build a building. Robert knew how to cut the lumber, and so they asked Ebeneezer if he would oversee the building of this chapel. And he said, sure, I don't know how to build a building, but I know how to build a ship. And so he said, I'll build it like an upside-down ship. And they hoisted up the walls, tied them with rawhide bindings and wet rawhide that would shrink and as it dried to bind it in place. And Ebeneezer always said it was good enough that if a flood ever came and it tipped upside down, it would float.
Of course, on Sundays, the Pine Valley Chapel is at its very best.
We have about 60 people.
So tienen que estar los chiquitos adelante, medianos atrás y los grandes atrás.
About 40 adults, 20 youth and children, and like 8 babies. So yes, it's a big family.
And what are the thoughts from others about the Pine Valley Chapel for those that first saw it?
Everybody has loved it. It is very different to what we are used to. Back in Guatemala, the buildings are different. We had that opportunity to build buildings in Guatemala as well as part of the church growing. But coming here and see more history, it's even amazing. Yeah, it's very amazing.
Somos la familia Bravo y estamos felices de poder estar visitando esta capilla. Es bastante antigua y creemos que con venir acá podemos conocer un poco más de la iglesia y poder conocer la historia y poder enseñarles a nuestras hijas en cuanto a lo que creemos y que ellas puedan ir conociendo un poco más. Estamos felices de poder estar acá.
Gracias.
That sits by itself with a beautiful blue sky behind it, and the white clapboards on the walls and the entrance, the elevated entrance, is certainly different than many of the LDS chapels that you would see in other parts of the state.
300 miles north of the Pine Valley, at This Is the Place Heritage Park, a replica of the Pine Valley Chapel gives tourists, wedding parties, and others a glimpse of the more famous, real Pine Valley Chapel. That's where Peter Goss offered an inspection and review of the celebrated shipbuilder's work.
Ebenezer's church really exhibits fine quality of craftsmanship, and that craftsmanship is throughout. For example, the elliptical, that is a slightly curved ceiling in the assembly room, lath and plaster, and we saw a picture of the interior of it up in the attic, and it is very similar to the way the lath and plaster was adhered in the tabernacle downtown, the Salt Lake Tabernacle. Well, it's very interesting that from his background of being a ship's carpenter, that he also was involved with raising cattle, and he lived in a number of different places. Bryce Canyon was named after Ebeneezer Bryce, and then he moved to various parts of Utah before ending up at the end of his life in Arizona, still involved with cattle raising, I believe.
Those pesky cows, forever it seems part of the Ebeneezer Bryce story. Just look out over those paprika-colored hoodoos. No wonder he proclaimed, "It's a hell of a place to lose a cow." Tropic, Utah on Highway 12 is just a few miles from Bryce Canyon National Park, but this is the place that carries the Bryce name into the future. There's Bryce Canyon Coffee Company, located on Bryce Way, as you can see on the street sign, schools, a pizza joint, and of course countless souvenirs carry the Bryce stamp. But the real story is at the Bryce Pioneer Village.
Ebeneezer Bryce was one of the first settlers in Tropic.
Inspired by the Ebeneezer Bryce story and his cabin, the Lefevre family opened up their own motel with historic cabins they hauled in from Bryce Canyon National Park.
It's a really historic because Bryce Canyon is the only national park that's named after a man. All the other parks in the country is named after Indian tribes or landscapes or whatever. But Bryce Canyon is named after Ebeneezer Bryce.
The Lefevre family had Ebenezer's real cabin on their property. It was a very big attraction, but after 50 years it began to fall apart. They tried to save it. They couldn't. Only a pile of logs remains.
We tore it down because the logs was all rotten and it was in our way of other construction we had to do, so that's where it went.
The cabin may be gone, but the legend and the lore of Ebeneezer Bryce rolls on.
And one of the old sayings that they've always said that he always cussed was it's a hell of a place to lose a cow in the hoodoos of Bryce Canyon. And I can really vouch for that, because I've been hiking in Bryce Canyon all my young life, and you look at it every day since. So it is very rough, and you can get lost in it quite easily.
The idea for outdoor art and murals is not new, but there has been a Renaissance touch placed on the walls of stores, shops, and gas stations that you find up and down the historic corridor in Utah. In Parowan, we found this mural featuring a bird and a box of chocolates. This tire shop perhaps needed a nice mural to stay in business. At the Silver Peak Supply convenience store and service station in Newcastle, a mining scene puts a shine on the place for customers. In Kanab, Utah, traffic along Highway 89 gets a scenic byway treat from lots of colorful murals. This one for a popular recreation and hunting store. The tourism office, a fanciful movie style. And over there, at the grocery store, is the artist, who's fast becoming somewhat of a celebrity around here.
Can I get your picture? Thank you. It's just that I'm a muralist, and they seem to recognize my work. So I sometimes don't see it, but they see it, and they'll say, "Oh, that looks like Patti's work," and normally it is, but they have now recognized my work, so that's pretty cool. I have to give it all these little holes before you can even go anywhere with it, because it looks so much better when it's all covered.
Patti Lewis doesn't just climb up there on the scaffold and start painting. There's research, history, a story fit for a wall she has to come up with.
Yes, this is going to be, and probably the women, maybe I can get the small, portrait of them, but it's going to say Kanab Fort, and then we're going to put Glazier's trading post here.
But this is just kind of a honor for our pioneers back in the early 1870s as they was coming to Kanab. And we had a lot of fun with it, as we was telling Patti Lewis, the artist, what we wanted to see on here. She was very good to do whatever we wanted to do, and it depicts the natural beauty of the red ledges and the sacrifice that the pioneers would have made in 1870.
So then I made the little squares, so I would lay it over here, here, and here, and divided it into 6 sections, And see what I mean? I'm going to put little chickens down here and stuff like that. It's interesting things, And like over at the tourist place, just postcards. So I thought, we're going to go, now showing the wild things,
Even a gas station has her full attention as she gives the town a makeover and a Western theme emerges. But always, always hard work with plenty of passion.
It's just get on the wall and start painting. Of course, I didn't have the figure quite right. That was bothering me. I had to struggle over that one, and I got it. And then it's just, like they say, eating an elephant one bite at a time.
In Rockville, Utah, we found a lot of natural beauty, but not a single mural, until we met Jody McGregor.
I am a muralist. Amongst other things, I do fine art as well. The Latin word mur, M-U-R, means wall. So mural comes from a painting that is an integral part of the wall. I started doing murals when I was in France. That was popular there. Usually in commercial endeavors, people would want to decorate the inside of their stores or the front of their stores.
She's done lots of mural work in Las Vegas. Here's some frescoes in a community clubhouse, an outdoor mural, even a drapery illusion. Her signature on many murals in Vegas. And in her own home in Rockville, she has perhaps her favorite.
And since I'm a muralist, it seems a shame not to have a mural in my own studio. So in thinking about what I should depict, here I am so close to Zion National Park, less than 5 miles, in fact, from the entrance to the park. And one of the main attractions in the park is Angel's Landing. So using a combination of different inspiration photos that I have taken from hiking up there, I am doing the Angel's Landing view.
Before we say goodbye to the mural stories, there is one more place you should know about. Koosharem, Utah, home to quiet country roads, a century-old amusement hall filled with colorful history. But where the town gets busy, across the street over there, the Grass Valley Mercantile.
And a lot of the old shelves and the old type stuff that was here back at the turn of the century. So some of them have interest in the old histories and the things that were here in the olden days. It's always nice to see the old stuff. New stuff is all around us. They were down in the basement. I don't know why they survived it.
Charles DeLange's ancestors opened the first Grass Valley Mercantile store back in the 1800s. And for generations, the family has been running the hardware store. After decades running it himself, Charles sold it. But not only do they keep his photo on a shelf in the store, they can't keep him from being the top attraction.
These are collars, cellulose collars. They put them around their neck because in the olden days, see, you'd have a collar. Of course, my neck is big for this.
The store is also the town post office, and everyone likes the phrase, "You've got mail," even if it arrives the old-fashioned way. So people come in and check their mailbox, say a few hellos, and enjoy life in and around the Grass Valley Merc.
It's fun to go fishing and hunting, and just four-wheeling around here is awesome. And it's just out of the way and a lot of fresh air and clean water and not all those chemicals that you get in the city.
Fish Lake is nice because
you don't know what you're going to be doing every day. 1 minute of the day you'll be fixing a tire, helping out a customer, and then another minute you'll be, helping somebody with some products and stuff. So it changes moment to moment, and it's really nice because when you're here, you're visiting with everybody that's in the town because you see them every day because they're coming in for mail or for a jug of milk or whatnot. So it's really pleasing to know everybody in your town. And that's probably the biggest payoff.
The store is friendly to everyone. No surprise then, this employee has her children playing while she puts her shift in.
You get all sorts of people coming in here, from the foreigners on vacation to hunters, because we're right in the section of 3 different mountains, so you get all the hunters and all the local people, which are amazing people. They are the most caring people that you'll ever meet.
I'm just looking for some pellets for this guy.
You can find almost anything in there if you look long enough.
That's right. Isn't this amazing? Oh, look at this selection. Right there. See, now I'm set up.
The variety on the shelves in the store, remarkable.
How about some darts for your...
now we're getting carried away.
For your kids' darts.
But I can't believe the selection of this place. This is neat.
But there's another fascinating chapter of the store history on the outside. There it is, right there on the big wall, the Scowcroft's Never Rip Overalls and Pants mural.
The old mural, some people still come in and ask for some of those overalls, but...
The overalls are gone, and so is the Scowcroft's operation. But years ago, the company was a regional leader in produce and dry goods. They employed hundreds. They were headquartered in Ogden, Utah, in a 4-story warehouse. The warehouse design was considered one of the most architecturally significant buildings in the whole region. It's now on the National Register of Historic Places. You could find their food label on spices, peanut butter, and ketchup.
The only thing I've got around from that company was some ketchup bottles, and they had what they called the pine tree brand. There's a picture of a pine tree. My dad said they had, canned items besides ketchup, but that's the only thing that we have around that anything about the old Scowcroft.
Fishing and hunting gear, candy for the children, all sorts of food, and aisles full of things from the past to the present.
I'd much rather support this place any day than Walmart.
This is local. If
Right.
there's local, this is local.
This is as local as it gets, bud.
But perhaps the friendships, parlance, and conversations are the best things you can get at the Grass Valley Merc.
Thanks.
Okay.
Just 5 miles or so down the highway from Koosharem, Utah, we stumbled onto a road trip museum of sorts, Ole's Place. They stopped pumping gasoline here back in 1977. But don't worry, you can still fill up with a stack of stories and a lot of fun history.
Ole Sorensen built this in his late 20s, early 30s, and the women ran it from the house. When somebody would come up, they'd run out during the day, and they'd get up in the night sometimes when people were in trouble. They're driving and worried about gas.
The shelves are filled with memorabilia that was once commonplace. Now they are being rediscovered for their historical significance. Overalls, once worn by gas station attendants. The vintage Coca-Cola icebox, full of soda pop, and visitors always get one before they leave.
Generally, they would stop here for gas and soda pop. We've got lots of people that when we rebuilt this, they came down to have their lime soda pop or something like that they used to get from my parents. It was when the boys were going out to hay for their grandfathers, their grandfather would bring them down here on the hay wagon with a team, fill their tires before they started and buy the boys a pop. And the boys haven't forgot it yet. They still tell me about it. The ones going fishing and hunting ducks and geese, they still talk about it. And so, yes, there's some good stories there.
The little gas station is a big hit with outsiders. People from all over the world stop in for a stroll back in time. Sorensen makes sure they sign the guest book before they leave.
A young woman and her friend came in here about 4 years ago, right after I started the book, and she had finished school in San Francisco. She was on her way back to Kuwait. And that's one of my favorites there.
Just 200 or so people live around here, but the place has a name, and that's important, as Bill Sorensen will tell you. Very important to every doggone one of them.
This community is named Greenwich, the same spelling as Greenwich in England. And they're the only, I think there's one somewhere in the Plain States. There's not many names called Greenwich. It's a very small town.
And his grandpa used to own the Mercantile. Hey guys, let's go in the house.
I enjoy it. It's my retirement, I guess you could say. I work in the garden and things like that for my own entertainment, but this is the best part of it. I've really enjoyed it.
78-year-old Bill Sorensen, watching the world go by along an old highway, but always ready as the door greeter to a real piece of the frontier past. We do have one footnote relative to the quaint wood frame white church in that beautiful Pine Valley. Locals there called us with an attendance number from the Labor Day Sunday service. 907 were counted. Oh my goodness. Ebeneezer Bryce, the old shipbuilder, perhaps he was right all along. That ship can float. I'm James Nelson. We'll see you next time out here on Discovery Road.
What's it like being up here painting all day?
Oh, it's nice. I mean, you're outside, you know, and the good weather, and meeting a lot of nice people. It's nice.
Charles Leland DeLange. Spell it. Standard Charles. Leland, L-E-L-A-N-D. DeLange, D-E-L-A-N-G-E. And we are in the Grass Valley Merc, 5 North Main in Koosharem, Utah.